Starting to see a conspiracy been fooling me. When I watch TV, they manufactured views all over the news. It's giving me the blues, and it's time to choose. Starting to wake up from this sleep, from all the lies they spread that run so deep. But I will lace no more. Who are they fighting for? It isn't me. But now I see there is a new world order, but we're not invited. So much blood and murder from the drones unsighted. World War III is haunting me. I've got to find a way to save my family. The human race has lost its way. We put our trust in science, but it's us who pay. Used to be civilized, but we've been compromised. We're on a one-way train. We've got to break this chain. Starting to see that we should be free. The powers that be want a piece of me. Should I do what they say or tell them go away? What is the price for freedom? Cause it sure ain't free. The time has come to raise the bar. There'll be nowhere to hide if there's a third world war. So let your voice be heard and let your heart decide to stand and fight for freedom while you've still got time. Wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up. Stand up, stand up. Stand up, stand up. Wake up, wake up. The time has come to fight. Wake up, wake up. Don't waste another night. Stand up, stand up. What are you waiting for? Stand up, stand up. Oh, they're gonna soon be at your door.
Good evening and welcome to Raconteurs News. There I are. There's my lovely face. Those observant ones amongst you will notice I've got the same top on as I had on yesterday. That's because I haven't moved from this very spot since I finished broadcasting last night. Good evening anyway. Hope you've had a good day. It's the 19th of February 2019 and you are live watching Raconteurs News in colour here, coming from you from the absolutely God's own country, Yorkshire, here in Sheffield. So as usual, I am joined by my man from over the border there, over in Satansville in Lancashire. Evening, Paul, mate. How you doing?
I'm okay, Paul. I'm sure you've got these jurisdictions mixed up. It's quite normal for jurisdictions that get mixed up though these days, isn't it?
Oh, here we go. We're nearly. So sorry. You know what? As in usual Raconteurs News form, as it were, we're having a little bit of trouble getting our guest on tonight. So what I'm doing is, we should do this a little bit. We should be a little bit, a little bit more professional, but we're not. She says she's got the Hangouts box mixed up. So she should be on very shortly. We've got a good guest tonight, actually, Pippa King. He's going to be joining us. Pippa is an expert in sort of biometrics school and all that sort of thing, and we've been able to get her on because it's half term and she's off this week, off work this week. But we hopefully we're going to be talking about biometrics in schools. How's your day been anyway, Webby? Just do us a bit of fill while I see if we can get her on.
It's same old. I'm back at work now, just on light duties until I'm back fully fit. Just dealing with the same old stuff, things that you think when you've been off a while, you think you go back to work, maybe things have improved. No, pretty much not. But it seems, Jason, that we've all got this. We've got this path that we're on, the path that I've been on has like buffeted me a bit, and it's given me a lot of good insights, a lot of great information. But the trouble is, it's a lot of information that people don't necessarily. It's not necessarily they don't want to hear, but they just don't know what to do with the information. And if once they've got the information, they don't know actually how they could progress it. So they end up just sitting around and bitching and moaning at each other, and it's quite, it brings down people who are in the vicinity. Everybody ends up starting to moan and feeling sorry for themselves, and that's in a work environment. Unfortunately, there's a lot of work environments, especially public sectors, that are experiencing this kind of thing now. And again, we always end up going back to, which I've had to walk out of rooms because of the arguments over them, but they're saying there's no money, we could save money, they find money for this, they find money for that. It's like smashing your face into a wall, Jason. If you're going to keep basing your arguments on a false paradigm, like there is money, then you're barking up the wrong tree straight away.
Absolutely, and people are doing that as well. But we were talking just before we came on here, when we were just having a quick chit chat. We were talking about this distraction that's going on at the moment, and I've not seen anything of all this. All I see is what people post, and for me that's enough for me to get the general gist of what's going on. Is people are getting wound up that there's this woman going to be coming back here who's been to Syria or what have you. It's just what do you make of that? It's just bizarre.
Well, like we said yesterday, they've revoked her British citizenship now. I mean, the ITV News are blatantly publishing this letter to show that, look at what the government have done. They've said no to this woman. I mean, considering she wanted to come back over here and she had she wanted all this sympathy, she didn't really do herself any favours by saying that the Manchester bombing was justified. And again, what you were talking about is this distraction. We don't even know whether these people are actually, as you touched on last night, Jason, is this woman actually where she says she is? Has it been brought forward for us to divide each other and to argue about? All these questions have got to be asked. Somebody's posting now about asking we've got 2 weeks or so to put in a second referendum for Brexit. I don't understand it. I really don't understand it. If you look at this objectively and stop thinking that you need somebody to save you with things, this country/company could work itself out by investing in itself. But the corporations that the government are helping and looking after are not helping this country. And that's what we need to do. We need to be investing money back in this country. Get ready with your Webingo. Bills of exchange were brought in already to do this, to make this better for us. Print our own banknotes, interest-free, no debt. Get people to do the jobs here. Then the people will invest and buy in companies that want to come and invest here. But what we've got now is we've got a council tax, a local government finance act that should be taking 100% of revenue from business rates. If they cannot get 100% of that, then they go to council tax. But the business rates are not getting touched. Amazon in America, Amazon made $11.2 billion profit, as we said last night, and they paid no taxes. That is because the people are subsidising the high street. So everybody who's paying council tax are subsidising the businesses that are being classed as exempt from paying any business rates.
Yeah. And the point that you were making earlier on, I've just had a message again from Pippa. She's still trying. It's something to do with trust. She's trying to get her computer to trust the Hangout. I don't know what that is. I know that usually God knows what technology does for us. But the point you were making earlier on about this this division that it's bringing up, and I spotted it firsthand today. I went into my local co-op, and there was I was stood in the queue, and then this guy walked in and said to the old woman Rita, who works behind counter, who I know quite well. He said to her, he said, "Can I borrow a pen? I need to write a phone number down for somebody." And so she gave him a pen, and he starts writing something down, and then he starts walking away with the pen. And so she says, "Can I have my pen? Can I have my pen back? Can I have my pen back?" And he's just ignoring her, completely ignoring her. He's walking towards the door, and he completely ignores her. And then as he gets to the door, he turns to the security guy who's stood in there. The cops around here have them, a security bloke, and he just gives him the pen, and he says, "Here you go. Here's something for you. I'll give it to the Muslim so that the Muslim's doing something." And then went off onto this tirade about, you know, about Muslims and all this sort of nonsense, and it was really weird. It was surreal that somebody had, you know, that it just decided to, you know, somebody he'd come in and he'd borrowed a pen and he'd written the number down, and then it just decided to make some sort of point about this guy that were a security guy there, you know, and it's just it's a bizarre byproduct of all this crap that's all over the news. And like you say, but when you get, you know, when there's real issues, they're not anywhere to be seen. Like you're talking about the bills of exchange and poverty and people being put into situations where they've not got enough food or they've not got enough money to heat themselves. And like you say, it's a farcical. It's almost a made up situation, isn't it?
It is, because you can't get to the bottom of this problem and solving it whilst you're still talking about, well, we haven't got the money to fix that, so we'll need to save money, we'll need to make cuts. Whilst you're thinking and working in that kind of system, it's false. It's false. You cannot be working like that. Somebody's just saying now, because of a no deal thing with Honda leaving and this leaving. What if there's no jobs? Well, we create jobs. We create jobs within the country and give people pieces of paper that they can go out and buy from companies who want to invest in this country. Is that not the basics, that, Jason? Is it really worth our while to be making sure that these car manufacturers keep churning out cars that nobody are buying? That's not sustainable either. So one way or another, these companies will either collapse or leave. It's just being blamed on Brexit, and everybody is jumping on the panic boat.
And Brexit, really, it's just been completely diluted, hasn't it? It's just been, we've now got this bizarre situation where members of the Labour Party have decided that they want to form their own cunts. But basically, it's a Blairite party, isn't it? Yeah. So it's essentially a cunt party, the cunt Labour Party. Sorry about my language and everything. I'm not fucking the art of the cunts. Anyone who wants to follow Tony Blair or you know or wants to be like Tony Blair or use his policies, they're just cunts. What's going to happen to the Labour Party now?
Well, like the voice of, like the hot mic caught on that interview on the BBC the other day, where it said somebody obviously in the studio got caught talking over the woman who's talking about Brexit, about the Labour Party, and he went, well, that's it, Labour's fucked then. And he said it live on BBC. They've got a lot to try and fight against now, because for some reason they don't want Jeremy Corbyn in. I know people quite well. Some people say that Jeremy Corbyn's not a terrorist sympathiser, he's an IRA terrorist. I know people who have that opinion on him because of them being in the armed forces during the days where he was trying to get this peace agreement and these talks going. So they don't share that that path. They don't have an understanding of that because of the experiences that they've had. And I think that's what's triggering a lot now, because it looked in a position. I mean, Theresa May, whether she's, I mean, people think she's incompetent. I think she's doing exactly what she's meant to be doing. But now it's looking so stupid for the Tories. It's impossible for the Tories with what they've done is to stay there. So the only option is to bring Labour in. Nobody wants Corbyn. For some reason, people either think Jeremy Corbyn could save them all, which, when you look at it, possibly he's not the cup of tea of what they want to take it forward, but maybe a bit like Trump, but on a lower scale, because for some reason none of them want him in there. Yet Labour is still one of those parties, aren't they? It's still the same puppeteer. So I don't know, that it's like they've decided that there's got to be something new. I've had people who I've known for a long time already, Labour Party voters, have already said, that's me out the Labour Party. I'm going to go with these independents. These people who've left the Labour Party and then moved on, they're still. Have the politics suddenly changed then, Jason? Are their policies going to be for the people now? I can't see it myself.
No. It's it is a bizarre situation, and we've been joined by our guest.
She's gone. We've been joined by our guest as she goes.
What a fast.
Pippa, brilliant. Thank you for persevering. I know we do generally tend to have, we're quite. It's a bit hit and miss, with people trying to get on. But thankfully, you've hit this time.
No, it's good. Am I sounding okay? Do I need to put earplugs in? Sounding okay?
No, you sound fine to me.
Good,
what about you, Webby? Do you think you're all right?
No, she's a bit quiet, but I can hear her fine. There's no feedback, so.
I'll turn you up, Pippa.
Okay.
I'll turn you up just a little bit. There we go. There we go. So, good evening. Welcome to Raconteurs News. How are you? I know you've been on before. Usually it's Adi that has had you on a couple of times before, but unfortunately he's not very well, so he's not been doing very much radio stuff, none of this stuff for quite a while. But how are you? Are you enjoying half term?
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I with the work that I do, I'm sort of a part-time teach piano, so I've got a lighter week this week. I've got pupils away, so that's good.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So, we know all about you. Well, just tell people, anybody because we've got quite a lot of new listeners to this show in recent times. So I just want you to introduce yourself, tell people exactly what you do, what your form of expertise is, and just let everybody know.
Okay, so about 2004, 2005, my children were 6 and 7, and I fingerprinted for a school library system. So essentially, from about 2005 till 2010, myself and maybe about a group of less than 10 parents in the UK, we were helped by No to ID and Privacy International. We lobbied Parliament for some sort of change in legislation to enable schools not to take children's fingerprints without telling parents, or really be banned in schools. So, but basically, schools were taking fingerprints and iris scans and facial recognition scans and infrared palm scans from children in schools across the UK, sort of 10, 15, 20 years ago, and not telling parents they were doing it. So they were taking these sort of biometric data, like passwords for canteen systems, library systems, registration systems, access to area systems, access to lockers. And it was essentially going on without anybody knowing about it, because children at school are in a compliant situation and they tend to do what they're told. If somebody says, put your fingerprint on this fingerprint scanner, they'll do it, especially when they're 6 and 7, which my children were. So to cut a very long story short, in 2012, the Protection of Freedoms Act was passed into legislation when the coalition government got in, and within that legislation, we got 3 clauses in Chapter 2 dealing with the processing of children's biometrics in education, and it was the first legislation globally to deal with minors using biometrics. So now schools have to get permission from both parents and the child if they want to fingerprint, iris scan, facially recognize child. If one parent objects, then that objection overrides the consent, and if the child objects, and even if both parents consent, the child's objection overrides the consent. So really, it's good in the fact that the non-consent overrides any consent. At the end of the day, that's that child's personal information. It will never change, and it is entirely up to that child, regardless of what age it is. Even if it was 4 years old, within the law, if that child doesn't want his fingerprint taken, nobody can force that child to have its fingerprint taken. So, but the problem is that schools, parents, and children are sort of lacking that knowledge of what the rights are. So, I set up a website, Biometrics in Schools, back in 2005. It was the only website on the internet talking about this because no other country was using this technology in schools. And I've sort of kept a log of what's been going on there, and I have parents that get in touch if they're uncertain of the law, or the schools haven't asked them for consent, and I've had children get in touch. In fact, I've had some children, which aren't now children, in their mid-20s, late 20s, get in touch because they were fingerprinted 10 or 15 years ago and sort of have begun to realise that actually maybe they shouldn't have been, or where's their fingerprint gone? So I've sort of been talking to that sort of slice of the generation that's been through the system to encourage them to do what's called subject access requests under the Data Protection Act, so they can go back to their school and the company that took the fingerprints and say, did you pass my data on to anybody, like security services or police, which they can do without telling you. So that's basically my background in a nutshell. But because I sort of I've been looking at the biometric market really since 2004, 2005, nothing in the adult market at all. It was only in education, really only in the UK. And of course now the story is very different. We use it to unlock our phones, whether it be facial, finger. It's used covertly on us in the form of the Met Police, South Wales Police using it. It's a huge industry, and I've been looking at this for the past 20 years. So that's sort of my background, and so I have the Biometrics in Schools website, which just deals with biometrics. And then I have a website called stateofsurveillance.com, which deals with other issues like police use of biometrics and surveillance technologies. And then I also have, unfortunately, a school in the UK thought it might be a good idea to put a radio frequency identification tag around 5,500 of its students without telling them. So I have a website called Against RFID in Schools, which is rfidinschools.com. Anyway, they shut that system down, but in the States they do routinely radio frequency tag the students there. So that's the sort of thing. But what happens is this technology tends to be tested on school children first in a compliant environment where nobody's going to object, or even if they know about it, and then it's brought in to the wider population, having better tested it on the kids, as it were, in my experience.
Is there any legislation at all that sets out what should happen to this information, this data, once the child has left the school? There's no need for a school to have a fingerprint of a child that doesn't go there anymore. Is there any legislation in place that tells the schools exactly what they have to do with the data?
Well, we've got 2 pieces of legislation that sort of govern data controllers. So we are data subjects, and if somebody processes, like a school or a business or the government processes our data, they are data controllers. And there are strict rules to what data controllers can do and can't do, and that's they can't retain data any longer than is necessary. I think maybe even certainly with regards to fingerprints and DNA, the police are under very strict with innocent people anyway to release or to destroy that data within 3 to 6 months, 12 months, depending on certain parameters. So schools do have an obligation, and the government has an obligation to destroy data when you've left within a certain reasonable amount of time, say 3 months, 6 months, certainly within 12 months, which is a sort of an audit year. But nobody polices that.
schools aren't in the business particularly of rigorous data protection. And certainly the Information Commissioner's Office that oversees the Data Protection Act and the GDPR, which is General Data Protection Regulations, which came in May 2018. It's a European directive. So there be a lack of policing with this. So really the only way to tap your own data trail, if you're keen to do that, is to use the Data Protection Act, a section of the Data Protection Act, which enables you to give a subject access request to the government, the schools, anybody, doctors, private companies, the company that supplied the school with the catering, etc., to ask them what data they have on you. So, and they have about 40 working days to reply to. They do have to give you everything they've got. And there's been some interesting subject access requests that have. I mean, I've not actually ever done one on myself or my children. Certainly, if you're a parent, if your children under 16, you have that right to ask for that data from whatever authority. After 16, I think the children can ask for their own subject access requests. But there's been a couple of interesting subject access requests that I'm going to talk about generally, but people might want to research a bit more. One is to do with a utilities company, and for them to sort of try and predict what sort of electricity you're going to do if you've not got a smart meter. We've got one person did a subject access request to his electricity gas suppliers, and they had photographs of his house. They had sort of all sorts of different information about how he sort of, how he kept his lawn, data mining them basically. And another interesting one was I was briefly involved with the anti-fracking community in East Yorkshire where I used to live.
Oops. Oh, sorry, I thought I'd lost you then. Go on.
No, still here. So the Met told files, sort of intelligence files on people, and I had a couple of friends that gave the Met Police subject access requests on their files, even though they'd never been arrested. The Met Police has files on them, and it was quite interesting them seeing what was redacted. So the people are obliged to give info to that extent. So that's a really interesting. So it's there. I mean, whatever the system is, I can't say I agree with it completely, but it is there, and we should hold these people to account, I think.
Yeah, the interesting thing, I had some dealings with the Information Commissioner's Office, and I found them to be quite helpful. I mean, it was a long time ago. It must have been 2005, 2006. I found them quite helpful. But it's knowing that you can do that, isn't it? It's actually knowing.
Yeah, I mean, the Information Commissioner's Office oversees the Data Protection Act and the Freedom of Information Act and the Environmental Regulations Act. So all of those acts are acts that enable you as a member of the public to get information from an authority, and the private act enables you to get data on yourself from anyone basically that you think is holding data on you, and they're obliged to give that data back to you or let you know what they're holding on you and how they're processing it and who they're sharing it with under the Data Protection Act. Freedom of Information Act is where you can ask public authorities, schools, doctors, NHS, government departments, any question is if they've got data on it, they have to cough it up, and the sort of time scale for that is 20 working days. And I've sent hundreds and hundreds of freedom of information requests to different schools asking them what sort of technology they're using and how they're using it. So, and the great thing about a freedom of information from the authorities, it needs to be robust enough as to be sort of held. If you get a response from a Freedom of Information Act, you've got a really solid piece of information in front of you. And I think at that point, rather than it just be, if you to the test and they've spent public money answering you, I feel a certain obligation to go and do something with that. So I will either put it on my blog so other people can read it, or I'll take it to an MP or say to an MP, I've had this back in a freedom of information request. Is it sufficiently interesting for you to ask a question about it? Say if there are 30 schools in their authority that were using fingerprint readers, etc., etc. And actually, that's worked well in that respect, because MPs are quite happy to take information like that and act upon it because they know it's robust. So the environmental information regulations, that's the enables you again to ask any public authority, but also private companies about their obligations to the environment. So you can ask them how much electricity they use, maybe, emission rates are. I don't know too much about that, but those are the 3 bits of legislation that the Information Commissioner's Office, sort of, which is a regulatory authority, sort of look after. I mean, they're sort of non-political, and I agree with you actually. You know that I've had some dealings, quite a bit of dealings with them, and they're very good at upholding the legislation. So if you're not getting an answer you're happy with, or you're not just getting an answer, they will absolutely follow up. I mean, it might be, and unfortunately, they're not the best funded body in the world, and actually with the amount of data and the data processing that's going around, you'd have thought the government would be sort of making that department bigger and bigger and bigger to cope with all this data sharing and breaches. But I find that their funding is woefully small with regards to the job they have to do. But there are some very good people in there, and they will help you if you've got a genuine problem. So yeah, that's the Information Commissioner's Office, and I think they're at ico.org.uk. So that's so yeah, familiarise yourself with 3 bits of legislation, because you can be really pesky and actually get to the bottom of things and hold people to account. You know, that's what we should be doing, I feel, anyway. And that's certainly what I did with the fingerprinting in schools. I was not happy at all that these teachers thought it was okay for them to fingerprint my kid without telling me. But also as well, I thought that it was giving my child a very wrong message, that actually in order for them to go and get knowledge, a library book, or in order for them to get some food, they had to give up their fingerprint. And that's not how this society works yet, anyway, certainly, or in the future, I hope. You know, that's a disproportionate amount of information for a small child to think it's okay to give. So I felt really strongly about that. So I kept at it. I kept at it for 8 years, and we got a change in the legislation. Well, we didn't get a change in legislation. We got legislation dealing with it, and it's been interesting sort of seeing the technology come into the more wider adult population and people sort of kicking off about it. I mean, the Information Commissioner, we had a really great Information Commissioner way back in 2004 called Richard Taylor, I think, or Richard Thomas, actually, must be Richard Thomas. We have somebody now called Elizabeth Denham, and she made a speech the other day saying, well, you know, one new thing that we're going to regulate is biometrics. And I just tweeted at her and said, you know, only 20 years too late, Mrs. You know, you should have been doing this when the kids were using it. You know, God, it's a bit late now. I mean, the first biometric system came in, as far as I know, in Scotland in 1999. So it's been a long time. I know these then children that were fingerprinted are now maybe in their 20s and 30s. And where has that data gone? Who's had a look at it? It's very difficult to. I mean, I've tried to do some data trails and see where stuff goes, and I've used freedom of information requests on the police to see if they've ever accessed the school system. And they've just said there's certain exemptions under the Freedom of Information Act that means that an authority doesn't have to reply, and one is a cost. And I think the 40 odd out of the 48 police forces at the time just said, oh, that's going to cost us too much money, we're not going to answer that. So I'm not certain. I don't know but it can, and if it can, why not? The data sharing that goes on between government departments is off the scale. We have no idea really about what's going on behind the scenes there.
Well, has there been, I'd be interested to know, has there been, and now we've, like you say, we're 20 years into this experiment that's been going on, like in 1999 it began. So there's an entire generation that's probably got lots of biometric data stored about them that, like you say, are now in the 20s and probably coming up to the 30s. Has there been a case, to your knowledge, has there been a case where somebody has been has had an effect on their life due to this data, whether it's they've been arrested for something or they've been convicted of a crime because, you know, they're on the database? Has there been any cases like that, to your knowledge?
I can't, not to my knowledge, no. I honestly I honestly don't know. I mean, I'm certainly not aware of anything like that, because I'm not aware of, the police aren't admitting to any transfer of data. And actually, when I was sort of, I sent that Freedom of Information request out in 2013. And I did sort of think at the time, do you know what? I don't think I'm going to get an answer to this, because if the police had said, yeah, we're accessing school fingerprint systems to help solve crimes, then that would have been the end of that technology. No other parent or kid would have let their, maybe some would have, but it would have killed, it would have been a dead duck in the water. And then if they'd have said, well, no, actually, no, we're not accessing school fingerprint systems. You can imagine the Sun and the red top newspapers going, police could access 9 million school kids' fingerprints for crime. Why aren't they doing that? Why aren't they clearing the crime up? And so I think they had to come back with a, well, we're not going to answer you sort of thing. So I honestly don't know. And I think if you went, I mean, maybe if you got picked up for a crime, or for a suspect for a crime, I don't know whether you would know how the police got information on you. I don't know whether, I mean, I guess you could ask, but I'm not aware. But I do know that the children that are now sort of young adults are starting to wonder why they were giving up fingerprints, when really now you don't have to in North, but yet they were doing it at school. So I have had a few people sort of get in touch and say, what can I do to make sure my data's not gone anywhere? But I don't think that the school, certainly if there's an ongoing investigation, the school's given biometric data to the police force, they are not obliged to let the child or the parent know they've done that if it can possibly solve a crime. I'm not sure if the crime has been solved, if the school can then say, yes, we gave it to the police. But certainly if it's ended up on the police database, they do have an obligation, if you're innocent, to destroy it under the Protection of Freedoms Act. There are stricter guidelines now, and we have a biometrics commissioner that does check that. I mean, school fingerprint suppliers will say, don't worry, we can't transfer this data from the school database onto the police database because it's encrypted. But to what extent, I'm not clear. Certainly the Department of Education has never tested the systems, and I do know that the National Institute for Standards in Technology, which is NIST based in the States, they have got little systems that make fingerprint systems able to talk to each other for obvious reasons, like you've got Interpol, Europol, FBI, you've got different agencies collecting fingerprints. They all need to be able to transfer fingerprints from one system to the next. So of course there's programs that do that. I've just realized that my battery, because I'm on another computer, is just about to die. So I'm just going to go and get a lead. Sorry. Okay. That's all right.
No problem. Listen, everybody, you're listening to Raconteurs News. It's myself, Jason Holmes, and Paul Webster, and we are joined tonight by Pippa King, who is just running out of a bit of juice. It took us long enough to get her on, so we don't want to lose her straight away. Let's say hello to some people in the chat room. Good evening to Eric Cookie Monsters in there, Super Leeds, Apple Charlotte is in there, new being as well. Ron Malcolm, blah, 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 blah. Yes, sheep is the plural of sheep. Okay, no problem. Leeds. It's good to see everybody in the chat room having a good time. Still, no, I have real trouble with this one. It's Lopsum Tarthrow. Lopsum Tarthrow. Hey, there you go. It's we've got such a good chat room in here. We've got all people, sort of everyone's chipping in and talking about this. I mean, it's an issue that we're like we were saying. We've got an entire generation that have given up all this data and all this. You would have thought that there would be more people saying, kids don't do this, don't give up your data, and more people are becoming aware. But I suppose people have just got extremely busy lives, and I
don't know. I think there's I think we're just so used to it. It has been a bit like a boiling frog sort of experience for us with this computer system. I mean, if they'd have thrown this at us as a big lump sum with all the technology and CCTV and mobile phones and what they can do and the tracking devices and car black boxes and all this 20 years ago, it had just been too much for us. We wouldn't have been able to comprehend it. you know, this very gradual incremental sort of introduction, and oh, by the way, did you know your phone can do this? Well, I've had it for 2 years, but no, but I've got it. Do you know what I mean? They sort of, it becomes a piece of technology, especially the phone, you can't do without, really, or people perceive they can't do without. Certainly the younger generation, I think.
Going back to the system that you were talking about, Pippa, the experience I've got with biometrics was when I was asked for the terms and conditions of it, because I wanted to know if it's a standalone system, like you're saying, who's got access to this standalone system. Are you in your legislation claiming that you're able to pass this data on? Is it sellable data? And if I leave the job, what happens to my biometrics? I want to know what all this happens. Out of 500 staff, there was only me that asked terms and conditions for that.
Wow.
Now, from that, what they kept telling me was, yeah, well, it's not actually a fingerprint. I said, well, what do you mean when you say it's not a fingerprint? You're asking me for my fingerprint. You're telling me it's not my fingerprint. So what is it? Well, what it does is it converts your fingerprint into numbers, and then that's what the system recognizes. I went, right. I said, so in order for it to convert it to numbers, would it not have to recognize a fingerprint? I said, well, the answer is yes, isn't it? It's got to, if it's going to convert it to numbers, it's got to be recognized in order for it to be converted, and vice versa. Well, and that's where you're at. As soon as you start asking people, they go on these courses, Pippa, and they're given that rhetoric, aren't they? Oh,
you know what?
This is great, blah blah blah, and then when you ask questions about it, they go, oh, I don't know.
Yeah. You know, the amount of times I've heard that, well, it's not a fingerprint, it's a number string. Well, in actual fact, really, I think I'd rather it be a fingerprint, because a fingerprint is far more difficult to transfer from machine to machine or end user to police than a number string is. So what these systems do is, and it does it with your face, it does it with your iris scan, it does it with your fingerprint. So it looks at your fingerprint, and it looks at where the whoops and the swirls are on your finger, and sort of creates a map, and then it converts that map however it looks at it, whether it looks at the angles, I don't know how it looks at all the distances between the salient points on your fingertip or the salient points between different parts of your face, and it measures it. And that's exactly what biometric means. Bio means life and metric means measure. So basically you're being measured. And that measurement turns into 40 digits long, 120 digits long. And so when you go to a biometric fingerprint system, it'll say put your fingerprint on once. You put it on once and it measures it. Then it'll say put it on again, and it'll measure it. The measurements will be slightly different because you might have a different angle, or you might have a different part of your finger depending where you put the pressure, and then it'll say measure it again. So it takes 3 pictures of your fingerprint, or analyses of your fingerprint, and then creates a number string, and then it'll think to itself, okay, well, within % of this number string, or 5% or 10% of this number string, we can have a 98% match of that person who's presenting that finger to this account. And then what should happen is the fingerprint will be discarded. So the shorter the number string, the less accurate I would say the system would be, because you've got less numbers to go from the thumbprint to the number string. The more accurate the system, you would have a longer number string, but then that number string is going to identify you a lot more. And those are the number strings that can get sort of decoded and sent on to different agencies. And it's not the fingerprint, it's not the picture of the fact. This was way back in 2000, it must be over 10 years ago, but it's on my website. There was some students at a university, I think it was the University of Colorado in the States, managed to take one of these number strings and really accurately reverse engineer it back into a fingerprint, because they could look at where the salient points were and where how the system had worked out what it was. Yeah. And that was 10 years ago. But I don't know how useful that would be anyway, because we do leave our fingerprints all over the place. And if somebody wanted to get your fingerprint, they could get it a little easier than that. But the point is that number string could potentially match up to another number string somewhere on another database if you were being run through another database.
Well, that's how I feel that system could be set up for the abuse of that, because that, you know, people are going to say, see the fingerprint, that one fingerprint. If we have a picture of your fingerprint, we won't even have these issues now. It's like bit by bit by bit, they want to bleed this stuff in. If you look at China now, there's people turning up to buy a train ticket and they're on a banned list because they've got a debt issue. They're being outed on 200-foot TV screens in the city centre saying such a body is now in debt, such a thing. They're having all credits taken off and they can't travel. They're facially recognised. That is like, that is the China's version is the wet dream of this system that they want to put in place here. They've done it so well with us, Pippa, because the British people normally can have a good knack of sussing bullshit out. But over the last 20 years, it's been so foggy and so, how can you put it? Distracted by with a lot what's happened over the last 20, 25 years. And you see the system now almost, it's on the last stretch and they're putting the full pelt in now. And, you know, people, I've been in these courts, other people have been in these courts, and they are blatantly telling you lies. They are blatantly committing fraud against you because they've been told, take as much as you can, just keep taking and keep taking. It's got to get to that point where people have had enough or the collapse comes. There's nothing that can stop this now. Either people draw a line and stop it and let's make something happen, or we wait. And they've already got the solutions to offer us.
I think it's interesting to make a couple of. I think one of the reasons why we've as a country have walked into this sort of surveillance society for two reasons. One is which we had CCTV cameras. We've had them for the past 10, 15, 20 years. We're one of the first countries to have them to the extent that we've got them. So we're used to CCTV cameras. We're used to having them up 10, 15 feet so we can't vandalise them. Because I can remember them going up when I was a lot younger and people were quite against them. So they went up. The second reason, and somebody made this point when we were sort of campaigning against biometrics in schools, and we were looking to Europe to see if the technology was in there. And we actually used the European Parliament, and we asked some of the MEPs there from other countries, and they just said there's absolutely no way that they would have that sort of system in any form in a European country because of the Second World War. They were at war, they were invaded, and as a consequence of international business machines, operating out of Germany, they're very suspicious of that type of surveillance technology that logs you like that. So there's two reasons there why I think we've walked into it as a society. But also as well, I think the reason why they've been able to escalate the sort of facial recognition or the capability of the cameras is because essentially if we're so used to these cameras being there, essentially to us the street furniture doesn't change. We've still got lampposts, we've still got cameras. If you look at a lamppost in a city centre, tiny antenna on it, I mean the 5G thing's a whole other conversation that I'm sure you've had. But it's got monitor. I mean, in Glasgow, which is one of the first smart cities we've got like a lamppost that can listen for different noises or types of noise. They've got antennas on that will sort of register noise pollution. They've got cameras on that will register traffic flow. They've got a CCTV, which isn't closed circuit television. It's actually IPTV, which is Internet Protocol. So it's independent. They all talk to each other wirelessly. They've got a CCTV, let's say CCTV, fixed public community system that has the capability to track people around the city centre using artificial intelligence. So they'll say, oh, there's a person of interest there. They've got yellow boots on and a red hat. We want to follow them, and the system will follow them around the city centre. In fact, if you've ever seen the Netflix Persons of Interest, a great series. I think it's on Netflix, but it's a series called Persons of Interest. The opening credits to that are so really similar to the opening credits to the system that Glasgow's got by a company called NICE Systems. It's called Suspect Search. So it's not, and so Glasgow say, well, it's to find missing persons and young children, and why not? You've just bought something called Suspect Search.
That's exactly it, though. That's exactly it, isn't it, Pippa? They sell it to people as if it's going to be the next best thing. This is what we really need. Over in Scotland, I remember that with the named person scheme, where whether you had issues in your family or not, you was going to be assigned a social worker. This was a test bed. It's the same with this 5G stuff coming through. Nobody knows about nobody's investigated it. Everybody's saying, yeah, but I can download a film like in 30 seconds. Well, can you not just wait 3 minutes? I could wait 3 minutes. I could wait 6 minutes for a film, as long as it's not going to microwave me face off.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's it with 5G. You know, that's sort of invisible, much like sort of the capabilities of what's going on behind the CCTV cameras. But just going back to Glasgow, this suspect search system they've got, it's been behind the camera system now since 2013. So I've kept sending Glasgow City Council freedom of information requests every 6 months. Switched it on yet? How many cameras have you got it behind? Is it operational? And they've come back and it's not operational yet. What they can't do, stupid idiots, before they bought it, they should have thought about this before they spent taxpayers' money on it. They can't sign off what's called a privacy impact assessment. So under data protection legislation, if you've got a system that collects data on people, you have to do a privacy impact assessment to see if you're impacting on their privacy. Which you'd have thought they might have done before they bought the system, but no, they bought the system and they found that it's obviously such an impact on privacy, they can't get the privacy impact assessment legally signed off, so they can't switch the system on. So the last freedom of information request I sent to them, I think I sent in maybe October, November last year, and they didn't reply. So they had the 20 days to reply, and they didn't. So I sent them, I think you need to have a look at this. You need to do an internal review as to why you've not replied to this. And they didn't reply to that. So I've now got a complaint with the Scottish Information Commission who's looking into it. And they've got the power to council and say, you need to answer this question or these questions. So I'm keeping an eye on what's going on there. So I don't know whether it's been switched on yet. I mean, Glasgow City Council answering freedom of information requests on this, but they do tend to answer them. So I've never taken a freedom of information request this far with them, and I will do, because I want to know whether or not they've switch that system on. And if they have switched it on, it'll be the first system like that in this country, and it certainly, as far as I know, will be the first system like that in the whole of Europe. Because
5G you're talking about there still? Sorry? Was that the 5G you were talking about there then?
No, I'm talking about the suspect search. So
yeah, I'm with you.
People, and what it can also do is it can analyse football, so that if there's a riot or demonstration, it can sort of say to police, right, you need to kettle here, or you need to put people down there. So it's a whole, not just facial detection, tracking persons, it's a whole, you know, looking at the city and looking at what's happening within the city with humans, individual humans and humans en masse, or, you know, if there's an anomalous package or a car activity somewhere, it will flag it up as this isn't normal activity. And so this is what's, but as I say, this, as far as I know, this is the first system, and I don't know where Glasgow is with 5G, but certainly that'll be working off either a Wi-Fi network or a 4G network.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't surprise me at all if Glasgow isn't one of the places, because Bristol's certainly well down the smart city route, and that's a 5G area.
That's what I'm keeping my eye out for, Pippa, because I know I've read quite a few articles when the Netherlands turned their test bed on for their 5G network. They just had a mass amount of birds just drop dead, birds just dropped out the trees and everything as soon as they turned the grid on, because you're flooding an already quite busy, you know, we're full of geomagnetism, microwaves, radiation everywhere. It's like if you could actually see it, it'd be like walking around in a fog of constant signals. We are those signals. We emit, we receive, we transmit these signals without all this pollution. What will it take when these companies of, I mean, when the first mobiles came out and they were bringing phones out, they weren't checking the equipment to see what the long-term health issues were, because the phone company said, that's not our problem. We've got the equipment that works. It's not our issues. So it then came down to government to investigate things. The governments are pushing these agendas out. They don't want to investigate themselves, but if they investigate themselves, there's a better chance of them getting the right results for what they want. So this is how they take control of the figures. And they seem to do it throughout the public sector, in particular, as much as what private companies might do it. But the public sector, Pippa, I've been privy to meetings where they've said, look, these are the figures for the year. If we take these figures away and these figures away, look how well we're doing. So if we take figures away, we're doing really well. But if we put the figures back, yeah, it's a bag of shit, really. And this is, it's where people draw the line, Pippa. I mean, we're talking about the surveillance stuff now and 5G. In the schools where they've been putting Wi-Fi, Jason has had Barry Trower on and that on here before, and Andy has had him on.
Yeah.
And the 5G network is like miles above what a Wi-Fi is. Stripping DNA of children. His statement was, whoever said to put Wi-Fi in schools should be done for murder and treason, because that is what we are doing to our children.
Well, I mean, when I was looking at the radio frequency devices used in West Cheshire College, that they hung around over the period of 3 years, 5,500 kids' necks, and the kids weren't aware. So the kids were basically walking around the college with a lanyard of
microwave radiation.
Well, they had this RFID tag.
Yeah.
It was operating at 5.35 to 5.75 gigahertz. Now, our Wi-Fi is operating at 2.45 gigahertz.
Yeah.
And my Wi-Fi station, I mean, I'm actually plugged in. I'm on I have a land thing, but where I used to live, it would sort of stretch about 60 foot, which sort of down off my garden. These kids were wearing a frequency device that was 535 to 575 as opposed to 2.45, so way up the spectrum, and that was going for about 300 feet.
Yeah,
I mean, it was, and there were thousands of children wearing this, so they weren't just frying themselves; they were frying people around them. And what really, I mean, this was 2010, I think, to 2013, so it was really quite a while ago. Is that they were wearing these, especially, I mean, not any sort of less on them, but I was thinking of girls, sort of developing teenage girls wearing an RFID tag, sort of in the middle of their chest. Just the consequences of that, I have no idea. And I had been thinking recently, because it's been 6 years now since that system was switched off, it was to maybe try and see what effect it had on that population, because those girls now will be in between, I don't know, 19, maybe 20, 27 years old, whether it's affected their fertility rate, whether it's affected their breasts at all in any way, because radio frequency. So every device that emits radio frequency should have what they call a SAR rating, or a specific absorption rate. And if you buy a mobile phone or a router that with whatever bits of information you get, probably right at the end, in the tiniest writing, whatever possible, they'll have a SAR rating. So it's SAR, and SAR ratings are based upon an American soldier's head density, and that their availability to absorb radio frequency. So I mean, they're big. I mean, an American infantryman is going to be he's going to be more robust than I am, certainly more robust than a child or a teenager. And so a child or teenager's body has more water than an adult's body, and certainly more water than an adult sort of muscular male body. And the SAR rating, they absorb radio frequency an awful lot more than adults do. So the SAR ratings aren't entirely accurate for the whole of the population, and they're certainly not accurate at all for children.
That's exactly what they were based on as well. The mobile phone things that the kids are. I mean, the average 8-year-old. Sorry, the average age of a child to get a smartphone or a phone is 8 years old, and as you're saying, they're absorbing much more than what we could. I mean, the thickness of a skull to put a phone up to your head of an adult compared to a child. The changes that you are making in that body, and when you actually know that the mobile phone health and safety issues were actually based on male and females over 20, over the age of 20, and there's 8-year-olds on phones, and then 10 years down the line, these kids have got all kinds of disorders. I mean, forget. Let's just put the mental health issues aside for a start. We're looking at the physical issues. Only last week, Pippa, it might have even been this week or over the weekend, but there was a 9-year-old girl I read an article of in Alabama. Her mum said it was too early in the morning for her to be on her phone. The kid went and hanged herself because she couldn't go on her phone. This is what is happening to children. The children.
It releases dopamine, doesn't it, in your brain?
Yes, and that's exactly it. So it's a hit. It's almost like a drug addict. You are taking a drug off a child who's already addicted, and this kid didn't see the point in living because the phone was gone. Now, if you apply that one instance and then look at how society is being engineered, is being pushed in this direction, you've got to ask the question, what is the health and safety aspects? Who actually cares about us, about our children? Because if it's us that care about our children, then it's time for us to grow up, take some responsibility, and stop wanting other people to wipe our asses and look after us, because the ones that are in charge are not looking after us.
No, God, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's why, I mean, you know, I knew nothing about biometric technology. I didn't know anything about the school system. I knew nothing about how government worked. I just taught piano, you know, that was me, but I just knew it was instinctively wrong to let my kids have their fingerprint taken, or anybody's kids have their fingerprint taken. It was just wrong. Yeah. And so I just got really, really mad in 2005, and I just stayed mad for years. I just thought, until, you know, something just has to be done. And if there was no legislation now, I'd still be at it, and I am still at it. I'm sort of making sure schools are, you know, sort of do this, but also as well as the consequence of that. I mean, I didn't really sort of even question what I was doing, or even whether I was ever going to be successful. I just knew it was wrong. It's a wrong thing to do, to fingerprint or try and fingerprint a mother's kids without telling. My motherly instinct just kicked in. But I mean, so as a consequence of doing that, I learned about the education system, how government works with education, how big business works with education, what data is worth in education, what a child's data is worth. And we made a decision after they'd been through primary school, which is up to the age of 11, that we were going to home educate. So I just thought there was no way my kids were pursuing their sort of lifelong data path that the government wanted from them through the education system. Because given the job that I've got, because I don't obviously start teaching until kids finish school at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I was at home during the day. So it was ideal, really. And so we had a very successful 5 years at high school where my children didn't go. They didn't step foot in school, and they were certainly. It was the best thing we ever did. Honestly, it was daunting. It was blooming daunting.
Yeah.
But it wasn't so much about giving them an education, because this was 2010 through to about 2015, 2016. They're only one school year apart, my two. It was more about teaching them how to discern information, and that wasn't just the crap that was on the internet. It was also that crap was coming off the television.
Yeah, it's how to think.
Don't watch, don't listen to that, because I grew up in the 1980s, and we all sat down at 6 o'clock. We all sat down at 9 o'clock, and maybe 10 o'clock.
Yeah, and
that we got our dose of this is what's going on in the world, and we didn't question it.
No.
And I now realise as an adult that I was just being lied to. I don't know. I mean, I had a view of what was happening in Northern Ireland at the time, and I have, unless I go and completely re-educate myself about the whole of the troubles in Northern Ireland, I just had the BBC's version of events on that, and I know that's not right, and I know I'm doing the people of Northern Ireland a disservice, actually not making myself more aware, because if you look back in history, we starved them to death, and there's all that you never get told about. So there's a lot more to this, and this is what the home education was mainly about. It's like, okay, well, we're getting told this from this source. Do we trust it? Well, maybe we do trust it, but let's anyway go and see. And this is what it was more about, discerning information rather than learning stuff that needs to be
exactly. It's about how to think, isn't it? It's showing your children how to think and not what to think. Me and Jason were talking. We've talked about it a few times, but I know Jason's getting itchy because we've gone 8 o'clock. But it's holding. It's the ability to hold two thoughts without a belief in one of them. You can critically think if you've not got a belief. You can hold them and stay separate, and then you can critically think. Our children aren't taught that.
And it's also as well, sorry, Jason, just to just to almost think, even if you don't know what to think or believe, it's to trust your instincts.
Mm-hmm.
I think as a species, we've lost that ability to think, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I feel like I should do this.
Pippa, I've had to unlearn everything I've ever learned. I've had to unlearn everything.
But never, well, yeah. Listen, we need to have a break. I just need a little bit of a comfort break, and I need to replenish something. So we're going to play a record. You're listening to Raconteurs News, and you're watching it as well in colour with me, Jason Holmes, Paul Webster. Watson's here as well, and I noticed that people in the chat room saying Watson needs to wear some socks. He's a little bit. Shall we say, it's unfulfilled because my mobility scooter's not really working very well, so I don't trust it to be able to take him for a walk. So he's having to go for a walk around the block when my missus comes in. So he's got a bit of pent-up energy that he's not been able to dismiss. So and he keeps growling as well. You can see his arse there, look, can't you? Just over the corner there. He's looking out of the window. He's probably trying to get a cat or something. He's okay. It's just please bear with me. I can't do anything about us having a floor like this, and his. I could have his toenails removed, I suppose, but that's probably not going to. Probably not a wise idea. Anyway, also in the chat room as well, I did notice that Super Leeds said that he got a flame weed killer thing. So, and it was quite the thought of Super Leeds with a flamethrower at his disposal doesn't really fill me with a lot of confidence. I don't think I'll be going anywhere near Leeds in the next few days. Anyway, we're going to be back in. We're just going to play one record. It's a Heath record, of course, because we don't want to get copyrighted. So cheers to Heath for this one. It's 5 minutes long. We'll see you back in 5 minutes.
Across a black gray, you're affecting me ecologically as you chase so long the butterflies away. See the people frown as the rain comes down on lit cigarettes, the raindrops on their gaze. But I feel unchanged every time that it rains. I could never be a prisoner to the sky. But the harder it falls, we get trapped in walls. So by memories of our failures, and it's pouring over me. Rearranging my dreams, I don't know what fate has in mind for me no more. Rain will fall, I go blind, think I'm losing my mind. The rain kicks you in or down until you drown. But the harder it falls, we get trapped in walls. So by memories of our failures, and it's pouring over me. I keep falling over me. I can see there's a rainbow shining, showing me the way. I go blind, time has left me so far behind. Now I wonder if I'll ever see the blue sky shining, my heart's crying. As the rain across your face, like a logically, as we chase the light, butterflies away. As the rain comes down on its cigarettes, the raindrops will take out.
There you go. That is Rain by Heath West, our Raconteurs News musician in residence, award-winning as well. He won an award as well last year for for a brilliant song. Check that out as well. Do a search for him, Heath West. You'll be able to find him, his name somewhere. He's on Facebook anyway. So. Welcome back to Raconteurs News. It's Tuesday night. It's all good. We're about 1:15. We went way over in the first hour, but then again, we didn't get you on well late anyway. So we've got Pippa King is our guest, and we are talking all sorts of. We were talking all sorts of things. Including 5G, which we've had on the show. You know, previously we've had other guests talking about 5G and all that sort of thing. Well, yes, there has been one or two times that has happened, and we've found out that 5G, amongst other things, gives you nosebleeds. So
can I just say, okay, so you think, so 5G, so we were talking about Wi-Fi at 2.45 gigahertz, and in West Cheshire College, they were tagging the kids with 5.35 to 575 gigahertz. 5G can go up to 29 gigahertz, so the frequency is getting higher and higher and higher. So
till it cooks us eventually, Pippa, I think. You know that boy. You know until it cooks us eventually. You know that boiling pot that you were talking about. Slowly turning it up. Slowly.
Well, you know, 9 gigahertz is high, which it is. It's incredibly high. So the thing that's come to my attention recently is something called millimeter microwave scanning. Actually, TSA scanners. So, you know, if you go to an airport and you walk through a scanner, there was some controversy around these. I think they started using them in the USA about 2010. So basically, you're walking through a TSA scanner, and it shows whether you've got a knife or a gun on you. But it also gives a fairly graphic picture of your body. And those scanners are working on in between 26 to 35 gigahertz. So they're really high frequency. And what they do is they send a splash of frequency out, so that the lower frequency can penetrate lesser densities, and the higher frequency can't penetrate the higher densities, and so you get a 3D image, much like an ultrasound sort of image. So a company, a UK company, and which actually was born out of Manchester Metropolitan University, funded by taxpayers' money because the Home Office wanted a similar style scanner, but rather than people be aware that they were being scanned, i.e. walking through a gate to the scanner, that they could basically beam onto a crowd of people and see who was carrying weapons. So there was something called the Public Information Technology, or the Parliamentary Information Technology Committee, that I think was disbanded, I'm going to say 2012, but anyway, it's not currently running. But this Parliamentary Information Technology Committee enabled a sort of Chatham House environment where it wasn't minuted, where members of Parliament and Home Office security services could go to business and say, look, this is our wish list of things that we'd quite like in the next 10 or 15 years. Is it possible to deliver on this? And I think one of the UK Home Office's wish list was this sort of type of scanning equipment that would scan crowds without them knowing about it, and the scanning equipment could identify people that were holding weapons, knives, bomb vests, those sort of things. So this was, I'm going to say, 20 years ago. So then in 2004, 2005, Manchester Metropolitan University got a grant from one of the research councils, I think it's the Engineering and Physics Research Council, to develop this technology whereby they had a ray gun, let's say, sort of about the size of a dinner plate that would scan somebody from a distance without them knowing about it. So Manchester Metropolitan University developed this with our money, and it morphed itself into a start of radio physics solutions in 2008. So the intellectual property is held by Manchester University and this company, and they have about 7 patents on this technology. And this sort of came to light with me about 2 or 3 years ago, and I wrote an article which is on stateofthesurveillance.com website. I wrote this article in 2016 because they were on about using this type of technology along with something similar to, say, what that Glasgow's got. So you've got CCTV facially tracking or sort of detection for the person of interest. Then the scanner would go on to the person and sort of say, has he got a weapon or not? Or, for example, the scanner would scan a crowd and say to this CCTV system, through artificial intelligence, we think this person here has got a weapon, let's follow them. And so the CCTV will then follow. And this was in a Boris Johnson Mayor showcase from about, I'm going to say 2014, 2015. I don't even know how I picked up on it, but I did. I have email alerts with radio frequency devices in and all sorts of different things, and it came up on one of those. So I looked into it, and this Radio Physics Solutions had never taken a product to market. They were still developing it. And they were working with UK Home Office, the Met Police, Greater Manchester Police, the National Ballistics Intelligence Services and ABIS to sort of develop it. And there was nowhere else, or there's no other technology, as far as I'm aware, that operates like this in a public arena in the world. I am dimly aware that China have a sort of similar technology that it can use in warfare, and certainly Raytheon have developed a technology within this same frequency that this scanner is using. So, like I said, the TSA scanners are operating maybe from about 24, 26 gigahertz to 30, 35 gigahertz. This scanning equipment is operating right up the spectrum, and we're talking 75 to 110 gigahertz. So it's, you know, if you think Wi-Fi is at 2.45 gigahertz, and this is at 75 to 110 gigahertz, this is what the UK Home Office thinks is a good idea to beam crowds with to see if they've got weapons. So I did this article in 2016, and I sent the Met Police a freedom of information request saying, because I looked at the Radio Physics Solutions website and they said, oh yes, we're working with these people. So I thought, well, I'll send them a freedom of information request. So I did. And you can see it on whatdotheyknow.com, which is a big website full of freedom of information requests. And they refused on grounds of national security. And for whatever reason, I didn't do it. I just thought, okay, there was obviously something else going on at the time. So I left it, but I have email alerts for Radio Physics Solutions and their product Myrtle, which is something radar alert, threat alert. I forget what it stands for. It's on my website. I've put it on state surveillance. And so anyway, just before Christmas this year, an email alert came in with radio physics solutions, and I thought, oh, somebody's written an article or something's happening. And it turned out that a journalist, a science and technology journalist in Seattle, who's actually English, but based in Seattle, had picked up on the fact that the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, which is a bit similar to our Ofcom in the States, had issued a license to Radio Physics Solutions, enabling them to, it's a special temporary authority license, which is basically an experimental license, enabling them to use this technology to beam onto a plaza outside a corporation's buildings to check if anybody passing through there was carrying weapons. How dangerous it is to walk somewhere in Seattle on the plaza, I don't know. But so he'd sort of written the article because it was groundbreaking technology. It's the first time a license has been issued like that in the States, certain use. And also as well, he made the point that the technology is you're designed to walk through it, but it's designed for a moving crowd. What happens if somebody decides to go and sit in this plaza outside and have a lunch? They're just going to be constantly bombarded with this microwave energy, which may or may not be harmful. I don't know. The company says it's not. I'm not a scientist. I leave people to make their own conclusions on what effect electromagnetic energy can have on us. So, but then he mentioned in the article that it was also being tested at a school in Texas. And I thought, it's the old chestnut again, isn't it? Get a new technology like radio frequency devices, like fingerprinting, like iris scanning, facial scanning, all of which has happened in UK schools. And let's go and test it on a bunch of kids. So I got in touch with the journalist and said, look, apart from me, you're the only person who's ever written an article about this company. How do I find out which school it is? And so he gave me the website of the FCC, Federal Communications Commission's website, and you can search on there for frequency range and see what license has been issued and the company. And so I went and had a search for Radio Physics Solutions, and I found they've only had 10 licenses given to them, and most of which are for trade shows where they've been showing to say, they've done demonstrations for Department of Defence over there, TSA, different police departments, and obviously a securities insurance company that supplies this school. So I found the license that they had that they'd been issued to test this sort of frequency on school kids, see if they were carrying weapons or bomb vests. And it ran from the 15th of November this year till the 15th of February this year, which was last Friday. So I caught this about, 4 weeks ago. So, I want to ask the school all these questions. And this is what I do. I ask freedom of information requests to British schools, but I've never done it abroad. So I had a look, and Texas have what they call the Public Information Act. And it's much like our Freedom of Information Act. And you can use it. Anybody can use it. You don't have to be resident in Texas or even the USA. Anybody can use any Freedom of Information Act anywhere in the world to ask for information. So I thought, right, okay, here we go. So I asked the school 7 questions. I said, have you got a privacy impact assessment? Has there been a health assessment? Can you show me the documents that where you've communicated with parents and kids about this? I want minutes of the meetings. I want copies of any correspondence, email, text, instant messaging, And the only thing they could give me was 50 pages of emails, because they had done no privacy impact assessment. They had done no health assessment. They had no minuted meetings where they discussed this technology. They had made the conscious decision not to tell parents or kids they were using it. And so the only thing the only thing they could give me was 50 pages of emails, where all this sort of came to light. Quite a lot of them were quite boring, but it was interesting to sort of see the communications between Radio Physics Solutions and the school. So basically, the school were going to test the technology in November, and they'd been given a license to just test it at the entrance of the school where kids were walking in and out. But the school had sort of decided independently that they were going to test it in the cafeteria and just beam these kids with radiation while they were sat eating their lunch. I know there's a fairly high footfall in the cafeteria, but even so, I'd have thought the vast majority of people would be sat down eating. As it happened, the scanning device, which is about the size of a dinner plate, and it comes in a handheld thing with a video, with a camera on top, so you can see where you're scanning. You can't see naked images because obviously they learnt the lesson with the TSA scanners. You can see real time what's happening here, and a green dot indicates that there's no weapon detected, and a red dot indicates there may be a weapon there. So anyways, it happened, this scanner arrived November the 19th, 20th, and it was damaged in transit, so they didn't go ahead with the scans. And that's where, in my Public Information Act request, all the data stopped. So there was no more emails. That was it. They were just waiting for the next scanner. That's really odd, because did the scanner arrive? Did they complete the test? Did they decide not to do it in the cafeteria? Did it? I don't know. So I got back in touch with the school, said it seems a little illogical that there's no more communication after this. And they just said, well, there wasn't. And we decided not to go ahead with it anyway. Now, I can dispute that. I can take that, not Freedom of Information, Public Information Act request to the state attorney. Because I was in touch with their office because this answer back from them. I wasn't certain what to do with it, because I found it odd and illogical that all the communication had stopped. So I could take it back to the state attorney's office, which is their equivalent of the Information Commissioner's office here. And they would look at it and decide whether or not the school had got more information. I don't know whether the school has or not. I may pursue this. But anyway, so this is where we're at with, so facial recognition technology behind CCTV sort of falls under the surveillance camera. We have a surveillance camera commissioner, he looks after that, and the information commissioner. So we have different regulatory bodies that look after different aspects of surveillance in society, hopefully to make sure or not that we're not being over surveilled. But this type of surveillance technology falls, I don't even think any member of parliament knows about it. In fact, I'm meeting with somebody in the Lords in a couple of weeks' time to sort of brief them on this. They've just sent the Home Office, Met Police, Greater Manchester Police, and the National Ballistics Intelligence Service Freedom of Information request. And I've just simply said to them, just give me all the communications solutions, or where you've talked about the technology, like that they produce. And I've sort of said, you can redact it. I don't mind. I'll just have the metadata. I'll just have the dates and times. I don't even want to know who sent it or who you've sent it to. I just want to. You can redact everything, but I just want to see how much chatter there's been. So I asked that last week. So if you go on whatdotheyknow.com, which is this website, then with Freedom of Information, they're all on there. And last time I sent requests on this, I got pushback with national security, law enforcement issues, which are exemptions under the Act. But I'm going to go to the Information Commissioner and dispute that, because this is surveillance technology that we need to know about. It is completely covert, and it was designed to be so. That was in the remit of Manchester Mets. So the idea is the Home Office stands on a roof, points this at a crowd, and it's got a limited sort of 50 feet, 30 meters sort of ability. But that's enough for people not to know that they're being scanned. And it's the size of a dinner plate. So unless you really know what you're looking for, which you won't, because when this technology first came to light, there was a tiny little segment on Crime Watch. There was 2 articles on the BBC, and then the BBC basically said in those articles, both of which State of Surveillance site I've linked to, there's basically a D notice on this technology because it's national security issues. So, but when Radio Physics Solutions, way back when in sort of 2015, 2016, they had a YouTube channel with about 8 or 9 videos on, all of showing the capabilities of what it can do, and they tested it in the States, and they've done this. So I downloaded them all. If you go back to their YouTube channel now, all gone. They've made it all private. There's no record of that. So unless you go back on the Wayback Machine to their website, which they've changed the name of slightly. So unless you knew what the original website was, there's essentially no information out there for the public. So there you go. So that's
it's really scary. I mean, it's not only scary, but it's also really creepy as well, because I know why they do it. I do understand why they do it, but there must be, you know, at least a little bit of a limit to what they'll do. But there just doesn't seem to be any limit. You were talking about, when we first began talking about it, we were talking about schools and that, but they've not only taken over our institutions, and so that they're in our institutions, but also now it's like where they want to surveil you wherever you are, whether you're on the high street, whether you're at home, and you know, these things that they've got now, that where they go, whatever, fucking Alexa or whatever sort of shit, you know. And there's even been a case where something that was recorded on Alexa was used in a murder trial. So, you know, it's just really, really creepy.
I think the thing is, as well, the issue this technology brings up is the fact that it's just technology. It can't determine the intent of somebody who is carrying a weapon. And in Texas, it's completely legal to carry weapons. You know, if you're a parent walking in school and you've got a small firearm, say in your handbag if you're a woman, or you're wearing one, what's the school going to do? Suddenly send a SWAT team out and pin you to the floor? For what? We're having a weapon when you're completely allowed to do so. What happens if there's a police officer that goes into a school? What happens if there's a groundsman or a worksman that goes in with what looks like a knife? What's going to happen at this point? What's going to happen if you have got somebody that goes in a school that has got bad intent, and you don't act on it because you don't know what to do? What happens if there is a school incident over there and suddenly the alarm's going off because there's now 20 people with weapons all over the place because there's policemen there? This technology is really highlighting what data is. It's just data. It is just data, and the artificial intelligence and the way that we treat data. I mean, I'm no Luddite, and I can sort of see health implications apart and all that rubbish, that there's a market for this, or and there shouldn't be, but there will be a market for this in US schools. But the school was saying, well, what about if we take it to a baseball game? Because all you're going to do if you have that technology in the school is push the problem somewhere else. A school bus. Oh, I can't tell you what, we'll put it on the school bus. We'll take it to the baseball game when they go over there. We'll take it on a school field trip. Where does the school boundary stop? Where do then you sort of say, well, hang on a minute, in order to keep kids safe all the time, maybe we should put these little scanners on every single lamppost. But of course, it doesn't just look at bodies. It can look inside cars. It can look inside homes. You know, at what point do we say, okay, it's enough? Just because you can do it doesn't mean to say that we should. It's just a tool. And so
there's also a danger that we get to the point where not just identifying these people that perhaps are carrying a weapon or whatever, like you said, which is perfectly legal in America, in Texas. In fact, there's quite a big a movement of people that do what they call open carry. So. Yeah. You know, they've always got the gun there, and everybody knows. And you know, my cousin lives in Texas, and he says, you know, the crime rates are so low because, you know, you don't know who's, you know, someone's going to pull a gun on you. So the crime rate's just completely low. But what happens when we get to a situation where we've got this artificial intelligence and it's telling, it's detecting certain things on people, but then it's been taken to the next level where as that piece of artificial intelligence will then choose to eradicate that threat. Perhaps they've got some sort of weapon on them, or you know, some microwave sort of thing where they can, you know, put somebody down. And so then you've got some guy walking who's going to a fancy dress party and he's got his guns on because he's a cowboy. And the AI thing decides that he's a threat and decides to take him out. You know, that's the progression that's going to happen. The AI is going to be making all of the choices.
Yeah, it's interesting because they have, and they've been doing this in Australia and Israel. It's a form of biometric called soft biometrics, where they don't look at you and say, that's Pippa King, that's John Smith. They'll look at your body movement. And I'm not going to say which airport it is, because I don't know if even I should know about this. But anyway, I got told that there's a particular airport in Britain, not in London, that's looking at a form of gate body control. They're so sophisticated that because of all the previous incidents at airports, terrorist incidents that have happened at airports, not just in the UK but around the world, the artificial intelligence has been able to recognise consistent features of human beings that are specific to somebody who's going to create a terrorist incident, which are only specific to those people. So they've managed to hone and sufficiently detail that data from those individuals so as to recognise, or hopefully recognise, when somebody else has got the intent to do it. Even I suppose it's like if somebody's telling a lie, maybe people go like this, or they blink too much. I don't know. It's that sort of subconscious body movement where you give away your intention. And I can, hopefully not, but I can see a marrying up of the radio physics solutions technology where it can identify a person with a weapon. But then that's not sufficient, like I've just said, because what you then need to do is you need to know what the intent of that person is. So the carrying weapon and the analysing of how the human is behaving will be something that why would we not go down that? We've got one company offering the analysis technology here. We've got another offering, the weapon carrying detection technology over here. At some point, they're going to start talking to each other, and really, if that happens on a large scale, that's game over, because there'll be no more revolutions, there'll be no more coups. But I mean, not that I I'm a big fan of violence or anything like that, but that's how human history is rewritten. That's how the Berlin Wall came down. That's how apartheid stopped in South Africa. Bad regimes we were given the opportunity to right it by overthrowing them. And if this sort of ubiquitous surveillance comes in, which it could well do in the next 20, 30 years, I mean, if they're going to push it underground, which it seems like they are doing, hiding behind national security, law enforcement issues, and information, all we will know is that we're not able to do anything anymore. We weren't able to, say the yellow vests that's happening in France at the moment, that could be stopped 20 miles before it even hits Paris. People will have their cars scanned, they'll have their intent. It sounds fanciful, it makes me sound like a conspiracy theorist, but this technology is here. There's
a lot of less theory these days in the conspiracy, I find. You only need two people to consort and conspire for it to be a conspiracy. There's miles more people conspiring, but it is being packaged as beneficial. And that's the stupidity of people, because there's so many people. The governments would not do that to their own people. It's the same with chemtrails. It can't be happening because they're spraying themselves. These people don't think like that. These people have got an agenda. I can't even give the idea to people how different these people think. It's what you wouldn't do. You wouldn't do that to people. These people would, and especially when you're talking profit. But then we go back to money that doesn't exist, and we're all wrapped up in this money thing. In a debt-based economy, Pippa, it doesn't work. We can't keep saying money. We can't do it. The technology that we're talking about, separately, we could all sound like nutters, but all this technology is going to be designed to actually talk to each other, to take photographs of each other. You've got, not only have you got Alexa, who has saved any police having to go to wiretapping for a wiretapping warrant. They can actually, you're actually just applying for the warrant online and buying it for them. Alexa is doing that. Alexa's listening. No, it's not. Yes, it is, because Alexa's been coming out with all kinds recently. Even the police in New York, they put a warrant out for the files for Alexa because there was a murder in the house, and they wanted to know what Alexa heard during that murder. You've also got Xbox One that actually scans the house, goes through the walls, it maps out your house. It has to, because it's mapping out you as you play Xbox One Live. So it's mapping everything out. Now, a smart meter is going to connect to that, to a smart TV, to a smart fridge, to a smart washer. You're done. They can turn, and then the pièce de résistance, they want you to have a microchip put in that will transmit and receive within a microwave grid of weaponry. And I just don't understand why anybody thinks that would be just such a great idea without going, are there any health and safety issues?
Yeah, yeah, what can I say? You know, it's reality, you know, the sci-fi films, and again, that's a whole other program that I'm sure you've been talked about before, you know, Hollywood softens up for all this. I don't want people to be too, I mean, you can get really depressed thinking about it, because, and also
I'm about to slip my wrists, I've got to tell you.
Bearing in mind what we're seeing is sort of probably 30-20 years behind what is actually existing in the military. But this is why I remain sort of positive, and I'm, as far as I can know, there's only myself and this other journalist, Mark Harris, in Seattle, that's written about this company and this technology coming from military, sort of into public domain, through freedom of information, and using the legislation that we've got to hold these people to account. Now, last time when I asked the Met about this technology 3 years ago, they just fobbed me off, and I took it because I didn't know enough about what I was doing, if I'm honest, at the time, and with that technology, and certainly with sort of going the whole hog with the Information Commissioner's Office. But I'm not going to have it this time. If they hide behind national security, you know, at the end of the day, we funded that technology, and my taxpayers' money that I've worked pretty hard for has gone to Manchester University for them to make it into a commercial product, sell it abroad, for somebody to make money out of it, and then for it to be surveilled on myself. I'm not happy with that. And also, as well, nobody else really knows that this technology is around. So I'd like at least a debate or some. Think what you will about Parliament, but it's the only.
Well, that's how it's meant to work, Pippa. You're not meant to ask questions about this. You're meant to just do what you do. You've just said you work hard. You let them steal all your equity. But the beauty of this system, Pippa, is you're talking about money again there. The beauty of this system, we are taught by our parents who give us our principles, who gave me my moral compass, that you must work hard, you must pay your bills, you must do this. The fact is that if I adhere to what the education system, what my parents told me, which was to go and get these pieces of paper, these promissory notes, and then take those promissory notes and try and pay for my gas, water, and electric, I do nothing with that debt that we are in, because we're in a debt-based economy. So my gas bill, when I promise to pay for it by giving them cash or using my debit card, I do nothing with the debt. So the government add interest onto that debt, forcing the national debt to go up. So every man and woman who's ever tried to pay a bill and continues to makes this national debt worse. They are programmed through the education system and parents to do that. So we are programmed to hang ourselves as quickly as we possibly can. And the government step in and say, look at what you've done, you silly boy. You've not fulfilled your obligation under the bills of exchange in this debt-based economy. You've done nothing with this debt. Do you know what we've got to do now? We're going to have to apply austerity, and we're going to have to take things off you. So the system is designed for us to drive ourselves into the ground while they steal all the money and then finish it off by, you've been silly, we'll have to take more stuff off you. And it's about people waking up and growing up and taking that responsibility like you did for your children. You didn't rely on a group to get together and then protest, which is legal acceptance. You went, I'm not having this for my kids. I'm making a stand. Now, fair enough, if you'd been over in America, you're talking about the the FBI and everybody getting involved in your business to teach your children at home, because of this belief that the system owns your children. And technically, because of what this system is set up like, they do own the children. And we never come out of that servitude because we never know how to act, because we're taught to act stupid.
I've got to intervene. We've got a claim on in the chat room for the Webingo. It's Lops is called Bingo. I'm just going to check his card in. Yes, congratulations, Lops. You win. I don't know what should we get.
What's he up on? What's he up on? I want to know what what fulfilled his card?
I think it was debt-based economy. I don't know. It was one or the other. It was one or the other. But yeah, we definitely got a bingo in there. So Webingo has been won for this evening. Lops. You'll be able to go and find all sorts of different things in our we've got like prizes like with numbers on, and that's how many wins that you can get. That like you can probably get a cuddly rabbit for 10 wins. Anyway, also I'd like to say thank you to Blazing somebody or other. Blazing Star, I think, who's in the chat room as well, who said earlier on that he's got some shipyard docking rope if I need any dental floss. Thank you. I will be in touch with you afterwards. Yes, I have got a gap in my teeth. It's there for a reason, but I don't know what it is. Anyway, listen, we've got about 15 minutes left here. We've got Pippa King on. It's been a good show tonight. We've had some great information, Pippa. It's just been. I know that we've been painting this sort of this dystopian future, and we're all going to be surveilled, and we're going. Are the measures we can take to avoid that as much as we can? Because I know we can't avoid it all the time because people have to go places and they're going to get surveilled. So, what are the ways that you can avoid as much as you can?
Use cash. Don't use credit or debit cards. Use cash wherever you can. Use public transport. If you're in London, use an Oyster isn't connected to a cash card. Use cash. As far as tracking you around cities, I don't think the cameras have got that capability so far. Like apart from Glasgow and some mobile units that the Met Police and South Wales Police have. Just don't engage in the system. Turn whatever phone you've got off, either leave it at home if you can leave it at home, and or just, I don't know, disengage as much as you can. I mean, I do to a certain extent, but I also choose not to as well, because in order for me to be able to do the research I do, I have to be online. But I have a virtual private network, so I have a VPN. So my IP address is shielded, so I get bounced around the globe a few times before I land on a website. I don't quite know how it works, but anyway, I got it all set up. So get yourself a VPN if you're going to be online. There's other people that know far more about it than me. So just do what you feel comfortable with. I mean, I think the problem is now, my phone acts as a radio, CD player. I use it for email. I use it to talk to people. It's what used to be 4 or 5 devices rolled into one. So they're increasingly difficult to put down, but they are a tracking device essentially at the end of the day. And there's I think it was Privacy International and Liberty have just launched a big campaign about police being able to capture data from phones without taking the phone off you, so they can use radio frequency devices to basically download data. I don't know much about it, but if you went to Privacy International or Liberty's website, they're just issuing or doing a big report on that. I start asking questions. If everybody in this country started sending freedom of information requests to the Home Office about facial recognition or millimeter microwave scanning, or the capabilities of what you're doing with this, what are you doing with that, they would very quickly get caught up in a lot of bureaucracy and just decide, well, it's okay. Well, I think what we'll do is we'll just be transparent, which of course they're not. But my advice would be, we can't undo everything. We can disengage as much as we can, but not completely. I think start asking questions, because these people do not like to be asked questions. They certainly don't like to ask questions. Once you've got a freedom of information response, you can make it public. It's there for the public, and I put them all on my website, or I do it all on whatdotheyknow.com, which is a great website. There's over 500,000 freedom of information requests there from members of the public in the UK to different authorities. You can go on there, have a good search. I search for fingerprints, facial recognition, biometrics, and there's not just me asking questions. There's a little bit. There used to be, but there's not now.
I know the feeling.
It's great. The people are becoming more empowered. I'm really heartened by that. But it is just ask questions, know your rights,
That's what I keep trying to get across to people. It's not a case of like the stuff I work with, as in the bills and stuff. I don't tell people to stop paying the bills. Just stop paying the bills because you don't owe it. I say, while you're doing it, learn why you're doing it, learn what you're doing wrong and how it should work. Because there's going to be a point, Pippa, where somebody we have them by the balls with this stuff. They can't get away from it. They are just going quicker and quicker to try and steal as much.
Which is why I think this sort of surveillance network is coming in quicker than it's almost like a race. It's a race then to stop us. Do we wake up completely before we get to a critical sort of 100th monkey syndrome, or can they keep the lid on it before we get to that point? And can they do something about it when we get to that point? That's how I feel we've sort of been at for the past at least sort of maybe 5 or 6 years, and I think the next decade is going to be really interesting in that effect. But what I am concerned about, and my main primary concern, is about the kids, because because they were used as guinea pigs, but B, because their point of reference for what we know as normality and privacy is rapidly diminishing. They have no concept of what it's like not to be tracked by a number plate system, national car number plate tracking system, and they accept that as the norm, and it's not. And we need to. I feel that from part of the work I do with another great, a company called Defend Digital Me, which is run by another mum, that looks at trying to educate kids and about how their data is used, because they are the most data mined section of society, and it won't be any of us that sorts this mess out that we've created. We've allowed ourselves to become this surveilled and data to become used so loosely. It'll be the next generation, and there'll be some horrific consequence somewhere on a massive scale that I think will prompt a change. I hope will prompt a change. But
there always has been, hasn't there?
Before it gets better, I'm sorry to say.
No, but it always has, Pippa. It always has to get worse, because me and Jason say it so often. People tend to do nothing as long as their world is not affected. Once it's punch you in the face and kick you in the balls, then you've got a choice to make. When it came to me, Pippa, I've been under the radar all my life. I've tried to learn things, but I've tried to stay in my bubble. When that bubble, no matter which way you turn, you're getting smacked, you're getting kicked, you're getting punched, and you're throwing the towel in, and then the towel's being thrown back in your face and saying, wipe your face and get on with this. You've got a choice to make. You either pull your pants down and say, well, you pulled my pants up when you've finished, or you say, I'm tightening my belt, you're going to fight me for this. And that's what I had to do. And it's not an easy place to be in, standing in courtrooms where they're using police against you. It does something to you when you're not used to that kind of heat. It does something to you mentally, and it messed me up, because I've thought that I'm going to go into somewhere and demonstrate I've got knowledge, and they're going to go, oh, hey, he knows what he's talking about. That wasn't the case. I couldn't have been more naive about that. And then you see that when you're actually using their own laws against them, saying you can't, what is this? What do you mean you're not going to engage with me on it? What do you mean you called the police? What do you mean you want me out the courtroom? They're just doing everything to just completely ignore everybody and put you into if you've got a beef with any of these companies, it's to put you in a place of burden of proof. So if you're as a defendant, they will stack everything up in the favor of the corporation. And if you want to appeal that, then you've got to become claimant. When I was up against British Gas, it was a £2.3 billion profit they made that year. Yet they've sent me the remedy that wants my signature and return back to them to set off my debt. That's how it works on the bills of exchange. That's why they send me the instrument. And then they just go, no, I've even got a letter, Pippa. You've sent us the gyro, but no payment. That's the payment. That is the payment. And you're speaking to people, all the best will in the world. I was speaking to Elizabeth Whatmore. If her name was Elizabeth and not a foreign name, I don't know, because I must have been talking to somebody in New Delhi, because whoever I went to all had the same accent. I couldn't get through to anybody to speak to anybody about my problems in settling my debt. That's how that something so easy has been just complicated and ripped up and put into all different parts of acts that you've got to find out where you stand. But it's you
Yeah,
that can find it and draw a line.
I think as well, what the authorities are very good at is compartmentalizing. So one person here has no idea what they're doing has an effect down here, or even there's somebody down there that deals with, you know, and no, and this is what they fragment. Everything's fragmented, so nobody has the full picture, apart from a very, very select few at the top, you know. So, but asking questions, you know.
That's all you've got to be doing. At the very least, just ask questions. Don't go and run into a bell tower and with a bull on and start shouting everything. Learn for yourself. Because there was I don't know if you, like you said, that before a certain period of time, you hadn't got a clue about this stuff. When it comes to you and you've got questions, if you ask a question and you're attacked, you're called names or anything like that, that makes me suspicious. If you can't just tell me why I'm wrong without calling me names, there's something not right there.
Yeah, and also as well at school, this is another sort of failing of the system is, okay, it's like freedom of information, data protection when I was at school, but laws like that, legislation like that existed. And it wasn't until my first freedom of information request till maybe 10, 15 years ago. And I can remember I was asking some schools in Tower Hamlets what they were doing with fingerprint systems. And I can remember hovering over the sort of enter button and saying, am I really allowed to do this? Am I really allowed to question authority? And I thought, you know, I've been so bloody to accept everything. And suddenly when I've got this legislation that enables me to hold people to account, I'm finding myself hesitant because it goes against everything I've ever been taught.
Exactly. That is it. That's it. We're indoctrinating it through the system, through our parents and everything. You know, it's well, if you've got nothing to hide, you've nothing to worry about. That is not the point.
I've got a penny for every time somebody said that.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you got a penny for every time somebody had said that to you, then you've been making money in a very weird way. We've got about 2 minutes left of the show tonight. We've got Pippa King on with us, and she's. I just want to give you really the last word this last couple of minutes, just to give your message to people. You know, is it hopeful? Are we going to win this? You know, because there are people, the people we've been talking about tonight, you know, the ones that are just not questioning this, they're not the ones that are listening to this broadcast at the moment.
Okay, so even if everybody that was listening to this, I don't know how many people that are listening to it. Okay, I'm going to pick a topic which I think everybody should be, in fact, everybody should be interested in. I'm not a big expert on this, and there's certainly other people better than me, but that's 5G. If everybody listening sent an email to their local council, freedom of information request is as simple as, I would like to know when you're switching 5G on in my area, where are the planning permissions for the masts? Information request, yours sincerely, blah, 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 blah. Just use your real name, and all they need is an email address, and they're obliged to answer you. That's it. So if you know, if there's 50 people or 500 people listening to this, if councils suddenly got a deluge of people really concerned about 5G, I think for many reasons, I think the thing that bothers me more about 5G is the health, but also as well, I think that this frequency, this technology will enable the surveillance grid to come in a lot more quicker. So I have two levels of concern about this: health, absolutely, completely, but if you let it come in, then we are looking at a very different scenario surveillance-wise, I feel. But also as well, you know, we have that capability to do that. And, you know, if it's not 5G, pick a subject that's close to your heart and start to be pesky, because we're allowed to do it. That's good.
Brilliant.
Oh, yeah, sorry, can I just say my websites?
Yes, go on.
So I think I might have mentioned them before, but I've got Biometrics in Schools, which is actually under pippaking.blogspot.com, because it was set up years and years and years ago. stateofsurveillance.com, which deals with everything that's not sort of school related. But I also have RFID in Schools, which is all about radio frequency devices that children carry in schools, which happens a lot more common than it should do. So thank you very much anyway for having me. I really appreciate being able to talk to you, and I hope, you know, sort of, although it might be a bit depressing, it's actually, I find it quite optimistic. These people need to be held to account, and the more that guys like you let people like me speak, then hopefully more people are going to ask some more questions. Thank you.
We've got to be optimistic, haven't we? Because otherwise we've got nothing, have we? You know, you can be pessimistic, and I know this sort of thing is, you can get drawn into it, and you do then start to think, well, you know, we don't seem to be getting anywhere. But, you know, you just keep trying.
I mean, I wanted to, you know, I was just a mum in a school playground with, you know, potentially having my 5 and 6-year-old kid fingerprinted. 7 years later, I'm in Parliament advising the Public Build Committee on the protection. I'd never done that in a million years. I didn't know what I was doing, but, you know, I stuck at it. It took 7 years, and legislation was way too late for the technology, but you can do it. You can actually do something. You can affect the change. It wasn't just me. It was me, you know, getting together with like-minded people. You know, individuals can be extremely sort of powerful, but actually as a group, unbelievably powerful. And I think if you're going to do anything like in a group, I would follow absolutely the anti-fracking community. Keep it small, keep it fractured, don't join anything big, keep it focused, and trust those that you trust around you. That's mine. Your gut saying one thing and your head saying another. I would go with your gut.
Definitely.
Anyway, that's just
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Pippa. It's been absolutely fascinating, and it's been great to speak to you again. And I can see why Adi was so enchanted with you. He used to have you on every other week, I think, at one time. But thank you very much for coming on, and thank you for giving us 2 hours of your time. It's been great. Listen, I want to mention a couple of things. God, and do you know what? It's just gone completely out of my head. I wanted to. Webby, go on. You say something, mate. Go on.
I've just said I wonder why it's gone out your head.
Well, you know what we're talking about. I was looking at this, and I was thinking about what has gone on tonight, and it's just all completely gone out of my head. So we'll see you next week, Monday and Tuesday. We've got no lined up at the moment, but we will have.
Actually, I'll speak to you off. I've got a guest for Monday potentially.
Okay. Oh, brilliant! Is it Dan Bostock?
It's not.
Okay. All right.
Not yet. Not yet.
Listen, I saw something that he posted, and I agreed with it, which were amazing because, you know, I don't usually agree with it, but he said something about every advert on TV seems to be a lesson in diversity, and I've noticed that there's no white people married to white people anymore. It's just
it's very true that
married to black people. It's all going to be.
Well, did you not see the candidates for Tower Hamlets? That's very diverse. That you have a look for the candidates for Tower Hamlets. Very diverse.
Yeah, I'll have a look for that. Actually, I just remember what I was going to say. What is interesting is I always have a YouTube open on. I have the YouTube stream open on one of another browser, and I noticed that I noticed before that it'd say that there was a one on the video. It'd say how many people were watching, and then on the thing that we're looking at, it would all then say how many people were watching, and it was always more people watching on this than it was that it was showing on YouTube. And I thought, oh, that's a bit weird. So I did write off a question to YouTube to the people, the fucking tech people, and now it doesn't show you how many people are watching on this one now, so it's just the YouTube version. So I thought that was interesting, the shadow banning sort of thing that we were talking about with different people, Joe Public and you know, Anne-Marie Carey, who also gets shadow banned. So I just thought that were interesting. So listen, anyway, thank you very much for listening to us tonight, to watching us. Watson's there on my shoulder. He's going to be coming and giving me a big licky kiss any moment now. And we'll see you next week. Thanks very much. Cheers, Paul.
No.